Bonjour. Thank you for being here. Good day. We saw the recent report that 1 out of 4 Canadians are going hungry because they cannot afford to buy the food that their families need. 1 out of 4 Canadians. That is a shocking number. That is clearly a serious problem when a country as wealthy as ours has 1 out of 4 Canadians that cannot buy enough food to keep their families fed and are going hungry. We know that the cost of living going up has had dire and serious impacts on people. We also know that the cost of gas going up has meant that family budgets are being squeezed. People are hurting. This is serious. Working families, children, parents are struggling as a result of the cost of living going up. But we also know when the cost of living goes up, it impacts workers, it impacts families, but it also benefits those at the very top. We see that those at the top make more profit. In fact, we know right now that corporate profits, according to economists, are one of the major drivers of inflation. The fact that corporations are making record profits in this difficult time has contributed to at least 1/4 of the inflation that we're experiencing right now. And I want just to highlight some of the facts right now in terms of the corporate profits that we're seeing. The 2021 corporate pre-tax profits in Canada hit an all-time high of $445 billion above the previous record set in 2018. So that's a record number in terms of profit set. We have some of the highest quarterly profit recorded by the oil and gas companies in 2021. There are significant, clear evidence that point to the fact that the large corporate profits, they're driving up costs because they want to make more profit. Their profits are contributing to inflation in a significant way. And in this context, what are the other parties doing? Well, the Liberals are saying, just wait. We've got indexed child benefit. We've got indexed GST tax credit. Just wait. People get help in a year. People can't afford to wait. Tell that to a family that right now is hungry because they cannot afford groceries. They can't afford to wait. Can't do it. And the Conservatives and the Liberals both want to allow corporations to continue to make these record profits, continue to allow billionaires and millionaires to receive more and more money than ever before, rather than do something about it. And that's why we put forward our plan. Our plan is to say families right now need help. They can't wait a year, as Liberals are saying. Liberals aren't taking this seriously. They aren't thinking that people are hurting as much as they are. They are hurting. The Conservatives and the Liberals both want to allow these companies to continue to see these record profits and do nothing about it, even though their record profits are driving up 1/4 of the inflation that we're experiencing right now. We're saying this. We want to tax the excess profits of these profitable companies, these corporations that are making record-setting profits. We want to tax their excess profits that they're making now and redistribute that to families that need it most, working families, regular families. We want to give them money directly, between $500 to $1,000 per family. That's going to go directly to families in need. That's going to go directly to workers. That's going to go directly to ordinary families. They need help now, and that's our plan. We see the record profits that corporations are setting and say that they need to pay their fair share. They need to reinvest that. We need to reinvest that into people that need it. And so that's our proposal. That's what we're putting forward today. Working families need help. They can't wait. And it is the responsibility of government when we see these excess profits being made that government step in and say, if you're making excess profits off the backs of people in a difficult time when people can't afford to eat, then you have to start paying your fair share. And we're going to redistribute that back to people, meaning families are going to receive between $500 to $1,000 directly in their pockets with our plan. Aujourd'hui, je veux parler du fait que un quart des Canadiens, un quart ont faim parce qu'ils ne peuvent pas acheter les épiceries dont ils ont besoin. C'est choquant, c'est inacceptable dans un pays assez riche que le nôtre qu'un quart des gens ne peut pas avoir assez de nourriture, assez des épiceries. C'est complètement inacceptable. Les libéraux disent qu'ils doivent attendre, après un an, on va augmenter l'aide aux gens. Aussi inacceptable. Les gens ne peuvent pas attendre un an. Particulièrement quand on a vu que les grandes entreprises dans ce pays ont gagné des profits records. Ils ont gagné plus d'argent dans cette année que les autres records qui étaient à 2018. Les économistes disent clairement qu'un écart de l'inflation, le coût de la vie qui augmente, est directement contribuable aux entreprises qui font des profits records. Donc, notre solution, c'est de livrer l'aide directement aux gens tout de suite, avec une augmentation de l'aide directe financière aux gens entre $500 et $1,000. Ça va directement aider les familles, les travailleurs qui ont besoin. Les conservateurs proposent une solution qui continue de laisser les grandes entreprises gagner des profits records, continuer d'augmenter les coûts de la vie, et c'est aussi inacceptable comme solution. Donc, notre solution, c'est de faire payer le juste part des grandes entreprises qui font des profits records, redistribuer cet argent aux familles, aux travailleurs qui ont besoin. C'est une solution qui va aider les familles maintenant, pas dans un an. C'est une solution qui reconnaîtra le grand défi que les familles font face à ce moment. Merci, thank you. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Thank you. We'll now start the question period. One question and one follow-up. Nous allons maintenant commencer avec la période de questions. Une question de suivi. Nous allons commencer dans la pièce. We'll start in the room.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. Dave Baxter with Global News. Now, we're seeing lots of talk on cost of living here. The Conservatives bringing forward their oppo motion. Liberals, as you mentioned, go back to the GST rebate, childcare, and of course talk about the war in Ukraine driving up the cost of food and fuel, which is having a very real global effect here. What do you think it would take for parliamentarians to come together, get rid of some of the ideological bickering that we're seeing, and just get stuff done for Canadians, really?
Well, that's exactly what we believe needs to happen. We've seen in this parliament, in the minority parliament, both in 2019 and now in 2021, those two elections were ones where Canadians decided to have minority governments. And in that context, our job is to make sure we get people help. That's exactly what we believe needs to be done. We don't need to see fighting or infighting. We don't need to see people posturing. We want to see solutions. That's why we use our power to deliver direct help to people. In the agreement, we're giving people direct help when it comes to getting the care they need for their teeth, making sure they can cover the cost of their medication, making sure that the child care, so their kids, so parents can go to work, that it is permanent, making sure that we get help to find places that people can actually afford to live in. Those are important steps. Right now, in a context where we see clearly that corporations are making these massive profits, they're making record-setting profits, and their record-setting profits are directly contributing to the cost of living going up. A fourth of the cost of living going up is directly contributable to the fact that these corporations are making these record profits. We believe very strongly the solution has to be redistributing wealth to people who need it most. The UK has already committed to moving forward on a windfall tax because it makes sense. The Liberal government has promised to tax big banks who've also made excess profits. We're saying expand that to the other sectors that are making excess profits, particularly the big box stores and oil and gas companies. We know that overall, the corporate sector in Canada is experiencing some of the highest profits they've ever seen, record-setting profits. The job of government is to say if they're increasing their prices, if corporations are gouging Canadians by jacking up their prices, or speculation is driving up the cost of living for people, and these corporations are making a massive windfall based on speculation, even though their costs have not gone up and their supply has not gone down. If they're making all these profits, the job of government is to say, you're making excess profits now that are hurting people. We're going to tax you directly, make you pay your fair share, and redistribute that back to people. It's important to note that even if we tax our fair share, these companies have still posted record profits. We're just saying if you're making record profits in a time that people are unable to even feed their families, what is the role of government to say, well, we're going to step in and provide direct help to people? Now, Liberals' plan is to make people wait a year. It's important to highlight that. They're going to increase GST and child benefit, but not now, not when people need it, not when we just saw a report that a fourth of Canadians can't feed their families. They're going to say, wait, starve for another year, and then maybe we'll help you out. That's wrong. We're saying let's tax them right now. There's been a GST windfall for the government as well. Let's redistribute that directly to people who need it. And that's going to be a direct solution, an immediate solution. It'll put up to $500 to $1,000 into pockets of families that need it. And it's going to help folks right now who are struggling with their groceries.
And just Shifting gears a bit, another big area lots of Canadians are worried about right now, summer travel, be it delays in passport offices and just the situations at airports that have been highlighted again and again and again. We've seen the government try to hire more workers, bring more people on, add more shifts. We're still seeing the massive backlogs. If you were in government, how would you be addressing the travel situation, both at passport offices and airports?
Well, first of all, we knew that this was going to happen. It was no surprise as soon as mandates were lifted, and we know that that's something that health experts had advised, and in some cases that as soon as that happened, people would travel more. When we were in the midst of the pandemic, people weren't traveling, weren't going overseas. It wasn't the time to go. Now folks are ready to travel for the summer, or planning to go visit family, or planning road trips, or planning visits overseas. It was very much predicted. It was something we could have predicted, and the government should have moved earlier. The federal government should have moved earlier to make sure we had sufficient staffing levels at airports, sufficient staffing levels at the passport office to make sure we met the demand that we knew was going to come. Many people put off renewing their passport because they weren't traveling. Now that they're traveling, they want to get their passport renewed. It is the government's responsibility to see what's going to happen next, to plan for it, to know that as soon as those mandates were being lifted, more staff should have been hired. What we would do in government is to make sure we've got adequate staffing levels to respond to people's needs. And that means either at airports, security lines, or at the passport offices. We need sufficient staffing to make sure we meet the needs of Canadians. And we know there's going to be an increased need now that people are now starting to travel once again.
Erica Ibrahim, the Canadian Press. Interim Conservative leader Candice Bergen said earlier today that when the Conservatives proposed motions to address the cost of living for Canadians, that the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party turned down those proposals at every turn, cutting the GST on fuel, things like that. And I'm curious, you're calling on the government to take action. How confident are you that they will answer that call? And how do you see the Liberal NDP agreement factoring into that?
We're going to use our position to continue to raise the solution, but we've seen a strong reticence, a reluctance on the part of both the Liberals and the Conservatives to go after the huge corporate profits that we're seeing. And again, I want to put that into context. People are hurting from this inflation. They are hurting from the cost of living going up. While people are hurting, if it was simply a matter of the cost having gone up, then corporations wouldn't be making record profits. If they were simply increasing their prices to meet the increased costs, then their profits would be similar to previous years. But they're not. They're setting record level profits. That means corporations right now, while people can't actually feed themselves, I can't highlight that enough. A report came out that a fourth of Canadians cannot afford the groceries they need to be able to feed their families. They're actually going hungry. At a time when families are going hungry and corporations aren't increasing their costs to meet the increased costs, they're actually exceeding that and raising their prices to make record profits. That is the whole role of government, to step in and say, well, you can't exploit people this way. I expect that a government would step up and say, if corporations are making these record profits, then government needs to step in and tax those excess profits and help people out. And this is not, I would have loved to have been the leader, but the UK is already committed to doing this. They see this as a very viable way forward. It makes sense, and they're doing it. We have done similar things in the past. Taxing excess profits is not a new idea. If we can't do it now, while a fourth of Canadians are going hungry, corporations are posting record levels of profit, then when will we ever do it? So what we've seen is the Liberals and Conservatives both don't have the courage to go after the excess profits of these corporations. We do. We're putting pressure on the government to do the same, to help people out right now, to acknowledge that people are hurting right now, and to give them directly between $500 to $1,000. That would really relieve a lot of pressure off families. So we're going to use the position we have in this minority government. We're going to push the government to do what's right. But the inaction of the Liberals will be the fault of the Liberals. If they don't decide to act, that's their fault. The problem that we've seen also is both Liberals and Conservatives seem to be more interested in protecting the profits of these wealthy, profitable corporations than helping families that are struggling. Neither of them are willing to look at this as a solution, despite it being abundantly clear that it is one of the best solutions moving forward.
Hi, Mr. Singh, Mackenzie Gray with CTV. I'd like to ask a question about your own political future. As I'm sure you know, there's a job opening in Ontario right now for the Ontario NDP leadership. You were the deputy leader before. You'd have a bigger caucus if you were in Ontario, and you'd be the leader of the official opposition instead of being the leader of the fourth party. Any interest in that job?
No, it's a really important job, and I look forward to supporting the next leader. I want to thank Andrea for all the hard work that she's done to get the party to the level that it's at. Thank everyone that was a part of the campaign, all the volunteers, all the incredible candidates. Shout out to my brother, Grathan Singh, who fought hard. But we've got a strong position, and I look forward to supporting the next leader in order to make sure we build an Ontario where no one's left behind, where people get the help that they need, and that we're investing in the solutions that people need.
In terms of your excess profits proposal today, can you give us some more details? What level specifically are you looking at taxing these large corporations? What would be the marginal tax rate on that, or the tax number on that? And how would you envision distributing this money back to Canadians?
So the plan is broadly speaking, I'll just repeat the plan and then get into details. The broad plan is the excess profits made by corporations should be taxed, and we redistribute that directly to people. We're proposing between $500 to $1,000. The way we're proposing that money get to families that need it most would be using the Canadian Child Benefit, increasing that by $500, and doubling the GST tax credit. So that combined will go to about 12.5 million Canadians. So that's a significant population of working class families, of regular families that need help. So that's the vehicle to distribute, using the Canadian Child Benefit and using the GST tax credit. Now, the metric for what an excess profit is, we've put forward a number of different metrics. And the Liberals have put forward a metric that they're proposing to apply for banks. We put that in the agreement because we saw the delay, that the Liberals weren't actually doing it. So in the agreement, we are pushing the government to fulfill that commitment to tax the excess profits of big banks. One of the proposals would be to double the corporate tax rate on the profits that exceed previous years in terms of their normal range of profit. The amount that exceeds that range would be subject to a doubling of the corporate tax rate, so 30% instead of the 15%. So that's one way. The Liberals' proposal is a tax above $1 billion, an increased tax rate on that. We could look at any one of those models, but we know that there has to be a way to tax the windfall excess profits, that there are different ways to do it, and we've proposed one way, the Liberals have proposed another. We're okay with both. Either way, what we want to see is a commitment to acknowledge, first of all, that there's this massive windfall that these corporations have experienced that is above and beyond the increased costs that could be attributed to various things that we're seeing, increased costs of oil and gas. Their profits exceed that. So acknowledging that excess profits and then using that tax method to redistribute wealth to people is our goal. And again, we've laid out two of the potential ways to do it. With the GST tax credit, the government is already enjoying a windfall as inflation has driven up GST profits for the government. So that windfall should be redistributed to people. So we've got the revenue here. It's not increasing, injecting more money into the system. It's about redistributing existing profits and existing windfalls to go to people that need it most. That's our belief. We strongly believe when we see these moments where there's these windfalls or these excess profits that go well above and beyond normal ranges, we're seeing record-setting profits. We're seeing the government get a windfall from the GST. That what we need to do in this time when a fourth of Canadians are starving is to redistribute that money back to the families, back to regular families that need it.
Thank you. We'll now go over to Zoom. First question on Zoom is GP Tasker from CBC.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Thanks for taking our questions.
Of course.
I wanted to circle back to something Mackenzie was asking you about. As you know, the Ontario NDP lost a bunch of seats. They lost their leader last week. Premier Ford now has a massive majority government here. Do you think that the Ontario Liberals and the NDP should consider a merger to take on the PCs?
No, the parties are very different. The approach of the NDP, just today, we can give you another example. We really want to go after the excess profits of corporations. Liberals have never shown an interest in doing that. We want to invest in healthcare in a meaningful way, make sure that people can see a doctor if they need to see a doctor. We want to make sure that we're helping workers out by investing in projects that create jobs for workers. We're a workers-based party. We're a party that believes in fairness. We want to make sure that if corporations are exploiting people, that government steps in and helps out people. These are very different values than the Liberal Party, and so the New Democrats will remain an independent party. I believe should remain an independent party that continues to fight for workers, stands up for good jobs, and make sure we help people get the support that they need if they need to go to a doctor, if they need to buy medication, if they need to see a dentist. We believe in making sure people get the help they need, and that's our focus. Liberals have shown that that's not their priority.
Another topic, the Mexican president won't be joining the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles this week as a protest against the U.S. not inviting Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela to the meeting. Do you think these three countries should have been included in the summit? And do you think Canada should skip the meeting because they're not there?
Well, I absolutely believe that Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua should be included. They are part of the Americas. They have the right to be there. They should be there. Just because President Biden has different political views from these countries should not be a bar. They have an interest in having their voice heard. They should be heard and they should be present. Concerns raised around human rights are always important to consider, but that is no grounds to deny these countries participation in a summit of the Americas. So I think that was a wrong decision. I understand why the president of Mexico is protesting, because we should see everyone who is in the region be able to participate clearly. And Canada should also make it clear that we support the participation of these three countries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question from Maura Flores from Politico.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I also wanted to ask about the Ontario election. The Progressive Conservatives made a pitch to blue-collar voters, working people who might traditionally have been NDP voters. They seem to have had some success with that. Are you worried about that? And how should the NDP respond and keep those voters in the NDP fold?
Well, I'm not worried about it. If we look at the federal Conservatives and what they've done over the past number of years since 2019, since that election, they have been absent. When people were struggling in the pandemic, the Conservatives can point to nothing, literally nothing that they've advocated for or successfully passed in terms of a policy or legislation that actually helped workers or families or even small businesses. They've been absent in what has been one of the most difficult times that Canadians have experienced. And they've been more interested on themselves. All we heard from the Conservatives for a number of years has been their infighting. They're fighting their own leader, trying to get rid of their leader, and that seems to be their only focus on themselves. And in that time, New Democrats have been there for families. We were there to make sure people got more help. We were there to send money directly to families. We were there to continue that help to families when the Liberals were threatening to end that help. And then now in this second minority government, it's New Democrats that are delivering help to people. People told me they couldn't afford to see a dentist. We're going to make sure that kids are going to be able to get their teeth looked after. People that are living in pain are going to be able to get help. We did that. And again, the Conservatives can't point to anything in the second minority government that was established in 2021 to help people in a real way. They've shown a disregard for the plight of workers and for families, and New Democrats have shown that we're there for them. So we're a party of workers, and I think it's important to always remember that we speak to what workers need, what families need. They need good jobs. They want good jobs. They want to see that their interests are looked after. They need help. They want to be able to make sure that they can care for their family, and we want to make sure that support that families need is there. And we've shown that. We've committed to that. So I'm not worried about federal Conservatives trying to speak to workers when they've done a horrible job of helping anyone, let alone workers.
How then do you explain provincially the Ontario NDP losing seats to the Progressive Conservatives in places like Timmins, for example?
Well, in terms of the question was to me, am I worried about it? And I can tell you the track record of the federal Conservatives and the fact that they've not done anything to really support workers. They've not done anything to support families in these past number of years when it's been some of the hardest years for people. And we have supported workers, we've supported families, and we're going to continue to fight for good jobs and fight to make sure people get the help they need. In Ontario, there's certainly more work that needs to be done, and the next leader will have that work in front of them to make sure that we speak to families and workers and make sure that we provide them with the solutions they need to the problems they're up against. But again, federally, I'm not worried. We're going to continue to show that we deliver results. we get help to people. We're focused on the things that families need, that workers need. They want to know that there's real investments being made in their communities to create good jobs, good working class jobs, to make sure families are supported. And we know that in this difficult time, people are struggling with the cost of living. They're hurting. And we're providing real concrete solutions that take on the profits of large corporations and redistribute that money to families that need it. So we're there for people, and we're going to continue to show in concrete ways how we're going to provide help to people.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. There's no more question on Zoom. This concludes the press conference.
Thank you. Merci.